most people in Britain feel that what's happening in Gaza goes way beyond what is acceptable for any country to say that it would do in order to protect itself.
Hi there. The International Court of Justice is listening to the South Africa versus Israel case tomorrow morning. What should be the UK government's response? The police is already sort of asking questions of travellers coming through Heathrow about whether they can provide some evidence. What should our position be on what is clearly a landmark case?
Dorothy.
Well, our own Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, has said that there may be or there is some evidence that Israel has been involved in what could be described as war crimes. And I think this is a very difficult one for people in Britain. They feel enormous sympathy for people in Israel because of the horrific attacks by Hamas. But now I feel that most people in Britain feel that what's happening in Gaza goes way beyond what is acceptable for any country to say that it would do in order to protect itself. You wake up in the morning and you think there is a country out there where 85% of the people do not have a home. We have a former student who cannot go back home and does not know if her whole family is alive or dead because there is no communication. And we know that people are going hungry. There is talk of starvation in the Middle East, not in some land far, far away. And I think when our own Foreign Secretary starts to talk about potential war crimes...
Well, to be accurate, he was talking about possible breaches of international law. I don't think he ever used the phrase
breaches of international law.
But the South African case revolves around the definition of genocide, doesn't it? And, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I couldn't sit here and give you the legal definition of genocide, but that's really what it revolves around. Are Israel's acts tantamount to genocide?
Well, I think what we should be concentrating on is the terrible suffering that's happening. And I personally don't think that getting ourselves as a country engaged in a huge row between ourselves as to whether or not this is genocide is where we should be.
Well, the very fact that Metropolitan Police are now intervening in this and sort of, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but it seems rather odd for them to be conducting some sort of inquiry into whether Israel is committing genocide. Kate Andrews.
Yeah, I'm not convinced they're going to solve that one based on their track record with just about everything else. But I'm not quite sure the Met Police are in a position to do that.
Well, they're apparently stopping people who are arriving at Heathrow from the Middle East, asking if they've seen any evidence of war crimes. I mean, I find that extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, and in a very strange way. Again, not least because the Met Police have such a poor track record when it comes to just about everything else. So I'm not convinced that they're going to be the one to solve, a many decade-long feud here between Israel and Palestine. But look, the International Court of Justice, this is a rather symbolic move from South Africa. They are not in a position to try any individual for war crimes. And to your point about unnecessary rows when people are dying, when there are, very, very serious issues afoot. Unfortunately, this strikes me as one of them. This is meant to prove a point. This is not meant to fundamentally make a difference. And I think the word genocide here is an inappropriate one. That does not mean that I support every action that Netanyahu is taking. That does not mean I support every action of the IDF. We can be critical, we can be fierce, and we can say that all of these lives count equally, while also recognizing that the IDF is not in the Gaza Strip right now simply to be there. There are hostages that are still in the hands of terrorists. And I think that the actions from Israel and the actions from Hamas terrorists are fundamentally different. And that is not to excuse any instance where something has gone badly wrong, but it is to say that Israel and the IDF are, they're dropping flyers when they plan to be in an area. They're calling cell phones to get people out of dangerous areas. We can say this is not enough. We can certainly look at the death toll and say that this is fundamentally tragic and still not fully acceptable. But I would not use the word genocide.
Okay.
I think that's an inappropriate comparison.
Well, I don't think I can add anything more to what Kate's just said, really, because she's said everything, I think, in a far more eloquent way than I could.
We are running behind, so if you want to go on to Zach, happy to do so.
I do. Literally. The only thing I would add to the point about the Met Police is that, it is a bit galling to think that they are willing to be at Heathrow Airport questioning people who are arriving on a matter such as this when they haven't been as front-footed as a lot of people wanted to see them be during some of the worst protests against Israel and the pro-Palestinian marches, where there was, some real terrible examples of anti-Semitism and and arguably hate, examples of hate crime going on in those protests. So I think the difference of approach in both of those situations is troubling to me.
Zach?
I'm one of only 5 people in British history who have been in leadership positions who are Jewish, so I take this really seriously, and I think it's also important, though, that we speak the truth. And I think when you look at what Netanyahu's government is doing, and this is a far-right government, they're at least guilty of genocidal intent. And that's not my words, that's the words of Netanyahu's ministers and MPs who have said things in Hebrew like, we need to nuke Gaza. Now, that is not Netanyahu saying that, but Netanyahu has never rebuffed it. And I think if you're leading a country and you've got MPs saying genocidal things like that...
That's not strictly true, because there have been, even ministers in his government who've made some pretty shocking remarks about eliminating Gaza. I can't remember, I haven't got the quotes in front of me. But he did admonish them. So, there may be some that he didn't, but to say that he has never done anything, I think is wrong.
But I think to let any of them go and allow...
Of his.
No, I understand that, but to allow them to continue to be in his government or to be in his party, I think is beyond disgusting with what's happening. I think the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in this country is also very worrying. So all of these things are very complicated. But where I'm coming to is that ultimately it's not for us, the same as the last question, to prejudge things or we're not lawyers to decide what is genocide or not genocide. That is well above where we're qualified to speak. However, someone does have to make that decision. So I welcome this application. What my worry is that it can take years to come to an answer. They have said that they might. You've become
so responsible since you've become deputy leader of the Green Party. A couple of years ago, he'd have been pronouncing on everything.
It's true. I just think, I worry that it will take years to come to an answer, but actually I think they've indicated that they will come to an interim decision within a couple of weeks or a few weeks. And I think that is really important because ultimately there's no way of saying this which isn't grim. People are dying, innocent people are dying, and we need a ceasefire, we need to end the violence, and ultimately being able to call this what it is will enable more international cooperation to be able to move towards that.
But just because innocent people are dying, that doesn't necessarily make it genocide, does it?
No, not at all. And innocent people can die in wars. But I think it's for what we're seeing nightly on our TV screens and streaming on our phones. It's for even, I know you've had the Israeli ambassador on your show a couple of times, I think, for an hour. I just think some of the things that she's said and still hasn't been revoked by the Israeli government, which for me is condoning the things that she's saying. And I think the things she's saying are awful. And I was at a synagogue a couple of weeks ago and a woman cried on my shoulder and just said, it hurts so much more that it's Jews doing this. Now, of course, that is not Jews all around the world, and it's not me as a Jewish person, but it is an Israeli government that is inextricably linked with Jews, and I feel it's important as a Jew in a leadership position to call out these actions.
Well, I understand that the ambassador's interview with me is actually featuring in the South African case. So
there you go.
Never thought I'd be
You've done a
quoted in the
service for the
International
world.
Criminal
Thank you.
Court, but there we go.